Welcome back. I want to start today's deep dive by asking you to completely forget a piece of advice you have probably heard 1,000 times.
Oh, let me guess. The $1 million goal.
You got it. We are constantly told to aim high, to visualize the massive end game.
Right, to focus all your energy on making that first $1 million.
Exactly. But today we're going to look at a counterintuitive approach from a millionaire that completely flips that script.
And the advice is pretty blunt, actually.
It is. The advice is stop focusing on making $1 million and instead focus all your energy on your first 10,000.
I mean, it sounds almost too simple at first glance.
Right.
But when you really dig into the mechanics of wealth building, that specific number isn't just a milestone. It's a fundamental threshold that alters your entire financial trajectory.
The mission for our deep dive today is to break down exactly why $10,000 is the ultimate financial tipping point. It is the exact line where you shift from a purely survival-based mode of existence to actual wealth building.
We are going to map out the psychological shifts, the mathematical realities, and the precise, realistic steps to get you there.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because when I was reading the source notes, I realized I've always viewed $10,000 as just an arbitrary nice-to-have number.
A lot of people do.
Yeah. But the math they use to back it up as a literal tipping point completely reframed how I think about emergency funds and wealth generation.
That reframing is essential. And I want to assure you right out of the gate that this isn't just motivational fluff or positive thinking.
Definitely not.
What we are analyzing today is deeply rooted in behavioral psychology and the absolute mathematical reality of compounding. The shift that happens at $10,000 is highly measurable.
Let's start with the psychological side of things, because the source material makes a very compelling point about what it calls the scarcity mindset.
Yeah, when you have zero savings or very close to it, you are fundamentally operating out of fear.
You take the very first job offer that comes your way, even if you know in your gut it's a terrible fit.
Simply because you need the immediate paycheck.
Right. You stay in toxic work environments or maybe even bad living situations because you literally cannot afford the upfront costs of leaving. You are trapped by
the immediate horizon.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is the concept of cognitive capacity. We often think of financial stress as just an emotional burden, but the research shows it is a literal neurological drain.
It eats up your brain's RAM, basically.
Precisely. Financial scarcity essentially eats up your cognitive RAM. You cannot process long-term strategic growth or think critically about investments when your brain's processing power is entirely allocated to short-term threat mitigation.
Your mental bandwidth is maxed out just trying to coordinate which bill gets paid on Friday and which one has to wait until the 15th.
When you are just trying to keep the lights on, there is zero processing power left for anything else. That chronic stress is exhausting.
And that is why hitting that $10,000 mark is so revolutionary. The source text talks about this beautiful concept called choice money.
I love that term.
Me too. Suddenly you have breathing room. It fundamentally changes how you view yourself. You stop looking in the mirror and seeing someone who is constantly at the mercy of the next unexpected expense.
And you start seeing someone who has a foundation. You have choices. You aren't just reacting to your environment anymore.
And that psychological shift, reclaiming your cognitive capacity, is the necessary precursor to the mathematical shift.
Right. Once your brain is free from the constant panic of survival, you can start making the higher level decisions that actually build momentum.
Which brings us to the snowball effect. We all know how compounding works conceptually, but the source provides a fascinating timeline that visualizes the math of the first $10,000 in a way that is incredibly stark.
Let's look at the specific math provided, because this is where the abstract theory becomes concrete reality.
Assume you are starting from absolute zero, and you manage to save and invest just $1,000 a year into a simple stock market index fund.
And historically, the stock market returns an average of around 10% per year.
To reach your first $10,000 at that rate of $1,000 a year, it is going to take you about 8 years.
8 years of strict discipline just to hit the starting line.
That sounds incredibly demoralizing for someone who is living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
I could easily see why people look at that timeline and just give up in year 2 or 3.
They absolutely do give up, and that is where the linear thinking trap catches them.
The linear trap, yeah.
People look at those 8 grueling years and they do some quick, flawed mental math. They think, well, if 10,000 took me 8 years of suffering, then getting to 100,000 is going to take me 80 years.
They think I will be dead before I see any real wealth.
Exactly, but that assumes linear growth.
Right.
The reality is that once that money is invested, it starts working alongside you. The initial push is agonizing, but then the dynamics fundamentally change.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because you aren't just adding your own $1,000 anymore. The market is adding its own money to your pile, and those returns are generating their own returns.
The timeline collapse is wild.
It really is.
Watch what happens to the math. Getting from 0 to 10,000 takes 8 years. But going from 10,000 to 20,000, that only takes 4.7 years.
The timeline drops by almost half.
It keeps compressing. From 20,000 to 30,000 takes just 3.5 years. 30 to 40,000 drops to 3.3 years.
Wow.
And going from 40,000 to 50,000 takes only 2.2 years. Each new $10,000 milestone takes significantly less time than the one before it.
Your earlier money is doing the heavy lifting for your future money.
Yes. The timeline visualization makes the initial 8-year grind seem entirely worth it.
But the text also points out that the 8-year timeline assumes a perfect vacuum where you are only putting away that baseline $1,000 a year.
Right, it's a baseline.
If you can find a way to bump that up to $2,000 or $3,000 a year, you bypass that initial demoralizing phase entirely. You accelerate that timeline massively.
It highlights why that first 10,000 is famously known as the hardest money you will ever save. It requires the most manual labor, the most willpower, and the highest degree of patience because the compounding hasn't taken over yet.
You are pushing the boulder uphill alone.
But once you break through that specific barrier, financial gravity starts pulling in your favor.
Okay, but that compounding timeline assumes everything goes perfectly.
Ugh.
And reality is messy.
Very messy.
How does this $10,000 goal hold up when life throws a massive wrench into the gears? We talked about the offense, the growth, but we need to analyze the defense.
There's an emergency fund aspect.
Exactly. We have all heard the grim statistic that 59% of Americans cannot cover a $1,000 emergency expense out of savings.
It is a widely cited metric, and it perfectly illustrates why the scarcity mindset is the default state for so many.
When you cannot comfortably cover a $1,000 hit every single day is lived on a knife's edge.
A flat tire or a broken water heater isn't just a logistical hassle, it is a financial catastrophe that often means putting basic living expenses on a high-interest credit card.
Which initiates a downward debt spiral.
Exactly.
But what the source points out, which is much less talked about, is the actual ceiling of those emergencies. Having $10,000 saved literally covers 99% of the unexpected disasters life will actually throw at you.
Most of the unexpected expenses we face, like a sudden medical deductible, a major home repair, an emergency flight for family reasons they rarely cross into 5-figure territory.
They're usually under $1,000, maybe creeping into the $2,000 or $3,000 range if you hit a particularly bad string of luck.
Right, the $10,000 number isn't arbitrary. It is statistically robust enough to absorb almost any common shock.
The author shared a highly detailed personal anecdote about this that really puts the math into perspective. They have been obsessively tracking their expenses for 11 years. Every single dollar accounted for.
Wow, 11 years.
Yeah. And in over a decade of tracking, their absolute biggest surprise emergency was a car maintenance bill for $2,286.
Ouch.
Now, they had already budgeted $500 for regular maintenance, so the actual surprise portion of the bill was $1,786.
Which is a frustrating expense, certainly.
Nobody wants to hand over nearly $2,000 to a mechanic on a Tuesday afternoon. But the author makes a brilliant point about the psychological reality of that moment.
The contrast is huge.
Right. Imagine how devastating that exact same bill would be if you only had $3,000 to your name. It would wipe out more than half of your entire net worth in a single swipe of a debit card.
You would be stressed, deeply discouraged, and terrified about making rent the following month.
But with $10,000 sitting there, the emotional tenor of the event changes completely. You pay the bill, you grumble about the inconvenience, and you move on with your day.
The crisis is downgraded to a chore.
You have built a functional moat around your castle.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is what financial planners refer to as capital allocation flexibility. It sounds technical, but it simply means you can now safely separate your defensive emergency money from your offensive investment money.
That separation is huge because when
Mm.
you only have a few $1,000s to your name, you are paralyzed by the fear of investing it.
You constantly think, what if I lock this capital up in a retirement account or a brokerage and my car transmission blows up tomorrow?
That entirely rational fear keeps people holding all their assets in cash, which means inflation is quietly eating away at their purchasing power year after year.
More importantly, they miss out entirely on the compound interest snowball we just mapped out. The $10,000 acts as a dedicated shield.
It protects your daily life, so your other money can safely go out into the market and work for you without the risk of being prematurely liquidated during a panic.
Yes. And the source material breaks down the offensive opportunities. This capital allocation flexibility opens up into three specific categories.
Let's hear them.
First, it opens up investment minimums and diversification. Some mutual funds or real estate syndications require a minimum buy-in, and having liquid cash on hand means you don't have to put all your eggs in one highly speculative basket.
Second, and I think this is the most impactful one for daily life, it allows for strategic career moves.
The career flexibility is paramount. Let's say you are making $60,000 a year in a role with no upward mobility and you are miserable.
A lot of people have been there.
A startup offers you a position at $50,000, but it comes with equity and massive upside potential in 5 years. If you are living paycheck to paycheck, you literally cannot afford to take the pay cut.
You are trapped.
But with a $10,000 buffer, you can absorb the temporary income hit to buy your future trajectory. You aren't handcuffed to your current salary.
The third category is the initial capital for entrepreneurial ventures. Maybe you need a few $1,000s to buy specialized equipment, to launch a side business, or to secure a small commercial lease for a storefront.
When you have the capital sitting there, you can take those calculated risks without risking your actual survival or going into crippling debt.
Beyond the internal opportunities, there is a profound external shift. It isn't just how you see yourself. It changes how the sociological machinery of the world sees you.
The halo effect of having capital.
Precisely. It is an unspoken privilege of the financially stable.
When you have substantial liquid savings, external entities view your risk profile differently. Lenders are more likely to approve you for favorable interest rates because you aren't desperate for the loan.
Landlords see you as a highly stable, desirable tenant and might waive certain deposits. Potential business partners view you as responsible and grounded.
That $10,000 sends a very loud, verifiable signal to the market that you are someone who has their house in order. Doors simply unlock for you that remain firmly shut or prohibitively expensive for people living paycheck to paycheck.
So what does this all mean? We understand the psychology, we have visualized the math, and we have analyzed the defensive and offensive power of the $10,000 milestone.
But execution is the hard part.
Right. If you are listening to this right now and you have $500 in your checking account, 10,000 can still sound like an insurmountable mountain. So how do we actually bridge the gap from a near zero balance to that $10,000 moat?
Let's map out the exact realistic blueprint to get there. The text outlines 3 very specific procedural steps that rely on system design rather than daily willpower.
Because relying on willpower is a losing game.
Designing systems is the only way to reliably bypass decision fatigue.
Step 1 is to automate your savings. The author suggests setting up an automatic transfer of $200 a month on the exact day your paycheck hit your account.
You set up the transfer once, and you never touch it again. You don't even log in to see the money move.
The psychology behind front-loading the automation is incredibly powerful. When you try to save by manually moving whatever happens to be left over at the end of the month, you are fighting a losing battle against decision fatigue and the constant temptation to spend.
By moving it the morning of payday, you are enforcing the principle of prioritizing your future self. And as the source notes, your brain is remarkably adaptable to constraints.
You will naturally adjust your daily lifestyle and consumption habits to live on whatever's visible in the checking account.
After a couple of months, you truly won't even notice that the $200 is missing from your operational budget.
Step 2 involves a complete psychological rebranding of your extra money. I find this framing particularly useful.
The windfalls.
Exactly. Over the course of a year, we all encounter little windfalls, a tax refund, a holiday bonus at work. Maybe you sell some old furniture online, or you pick up a weekend consulting gig.
The strict rule here is that 100% of those windfalls go straight into the $10,000 fund.
You have to actively stop treating these influxes as fun money and start treating them as freedom money.
The distinction between fun money and freedom money is profound when you analyze what you are actually purchasing. Fun money buys you a temporary distraction, a nice dinner, out a new piece of technology that will be obsolete in 2 years.
Freedom money buys you the cognitive capacity and the capital allocation flexibility we discussed earlier.
You are quite literally buying your future peace of mind and your ability to take strategic risks. It is a much higher return on investment.
Step 3 is making the goal absolutely non-negotiable. You have to treat this specific savings target with the exact same life or death seriousness that you treat your rent or your mortgage payment.
You wouldn't just casually decide to skip rent this month to buy a new jacket.
You have to apply that exact same rigid energy to your freedom fund. It is a fixed bill owed to yourself.
Let's ground this system in some realistic timelines, because managing expectations is key to preventing that year 3 burnout we discussed. If you follow step 1 and automate $200 a month consistently, the math dictates that you will hit your $10,000 goal in about 4 years.
And if someone listening is thinking, I have analyzed my budget and I literally cannot swing $200 right now, the author notes that you shouldn't let that paralyze you.
Start with $100 a month.
Yes, the timeline extends to 8 years. That sounds like an eternity. But those 8 years are going to pass regardless of what you do.
You can either be 8 years older with a $10,000 fortress or 8 years older with zero safety net still stressing over a flat tire. The key is to simply initiate the system.
Time passes irrespective of our financial choices. But for those who are highly motivated to radically accelerate the process and bypass the multi-year grind, the text offers a powerful tactic deploying a temporary side hustle.
This is the timeline game changer.
If you can leverage your skills to bring in just an extra $300 a month, maybe doing some freelance writing, graphic design tutoring, or driving for a rideshare app, you compress that timeline dramatically.
You can hit the $10,000 mark in under 3 years. You trade a few years of hustle for a lifetime of foundational security.
While you're optimizing your income, it is equally important to focus on the right areas of your budget. The source highlights a massive misconception in the mainstream personal finance space.
We are constantly told to obsess over tiny daily expenses. The classic advice is to agonizingly cut out your morning coffee or skip a $5 treat.
The endless debate over avocado toast and lattes ruining your financial future.
It is a tired and fundamentally flawed trope. The trap isn't the $5 coffee. The trap is decision fatigue.
Right.
When you spend your finite daily willpower fighting yourself over tiny choices, you have absolutely no mental energy left to renegotiate your $1,500 rent or switch your car insurance provider.
Depriving yourself of tiny daily joys is a fast track to psychological burnout.
The text advises focusing your energy exclusively on the big wins. Look at your major structural expenses, housing, transportation, and recurring insurance premiums.
Can you negotiate a lower rate on your insurance by making 3 phone calls? Can you rethink your car situation entirely? Can you find a more efficient living arrangement or refinance a debt?
Optimizing the structural things once rather than fighting the small things every single day. Making one structural change to a major expense can free up $300 a month on autopilot without requiring you to use a shred of willpower every morning at the coffee shop.
Now, there's one last pro tip from the source material that is vital to the blueprint because it is the secret to getting the snowball rolling early. Do not let this growing fund just sit in a dead zero interest checking account.
This is a critical mechanical point. While you are spending 3 or 4 years building to that $10,000 mark, inflation is actively working against you if your money is stagnant.
The strategy outlined is this. Once you hit your very first milestone of $1,000 in cash savings, start putting portions of the new incoming savings into simple, low-cost index funds or high-yield vehicles.
That way, while you are grinding away trying to save the next $9,000, the money you have already accumulated is actually growing on its own.
It allows you to leverage the compound interest timeline we discussed earlier, even before you've reached the final goal. You are effectively starting the snowball rolling down the hill while you are still manually pushing it.
And the psychological momentum just builds on itself. The author notes that once you hit 1,000, then 3,000, then 5,000, something fundamentally clicks in your brain.
You can clearly see the finish line. It stops being this impossible abstract dream, and it just becomes an inevitable destination.
You naturally start finding creative ways to save a little more or earn a little more because, frankly, winning feels good. The inertia reverses.
Success breeds its own neurological rewards. The hardest part of the entire process truly is just the initial friction of starting.
Whether it is a $200 automated transfer this Friday or just $50, the act of starting fundamentally shifts you off the zero line and changes your trajectory.
So let's pull all of this together. The core takeaway from today's deep dive is that your first $10,000 is not just a nice number to look at on a bank statement.
No. It is the absolute non-negotiable foundation that shifts your entire existence from playing defense against the world to playing offense for your future.
It changes how you process information. It frees up your brain's cognitive RAM, and it completely alters how the sociological machinery of the world perceives and treats you.
It is the protective moat around your castle that lets you finally start taking the smart, calculated risks that build generational wealth.
It is the definitive shift from reacting to the circumstances of your life to actively designing them. I want to turn this over to you listening right now. Take a mental inventory of where you are on this journey.
Where are you starting from today?
Exactly. Are you just gearing up to design your automated system and push for that very first $1,000, or are you aggressively closing in on the $10,000 finish line?
Wherever you happen to be on that timeline, remember that the compounding math works, the psychological momentum is very real, and the absolute hardest part is simply choosing to take that first structural step today.